Alright guys, what's up? Welcome back to my YouTube channel. It's been a while since I made any kind of YouTube video, so we're going to see if I even remember how to do this. But today I thought it's a nice clear day outside, there's no clouds out. Well, there's a little bit of clouds, but not very many. But it's a nice clear day out, the sun's out. So I thought I'm going to take some pictures of the sun and I'm going to take you guys through doing that and show you some of the camera settings and equipment that I use in order to do this. Now, before we get into it, I would just like to say that do not do this if you do not have special solar filters for imaging the sun. If you take your normal camera and lens and just point it at the sun, you could do one of two things. You could hurt your eyesight and risk damaging your eyes, or you could end up risking burning out the image sensor on your camera and damaging your camera so you can no longer use it. So unless you have special equipment to do this, do not do this. But I have special equipment to do this, so that is why I am able to take photographs of the sun. So I'm going to set up my equipment and show you guys some of the stuff that I'm using to do this, as well as some of the camera settings used to do this. So let's get started on setting stuff up. Okay, so first things first, we have to set up our mount. Now, the mount I'm using is called the Skywatcher Star Adventurer GTI. It is a go-to equatorial tracking mount. And you don't really need to use one of these to take photographs of the sun, but the only reason I'm using it is because once I have it set up and everything, and leveled and whatnot, and the camera mounted up to it, I can point it at the sun and it will stay locked onto the sun. That way I don't have to keep adjusting the camera every so often as the sun drifts out of the frame. It's not really necessary, but it's a handy tool to have, and it'll make my imaging session a lot easier. That way I'm not constantly adjusting the camera every so often. So yeah, that's what I'm using for that, and I'm just using it, like I said, just to make my life a little bit easier and just to keep the sun in frame the whole time. Okay, so now what I'm doing here is I'm running an extension cord out so I can power the camera and the mount. Now, both my camera and the Star Adventure GTI could be run using batteries, but I find that in the cold Michigan winter weather, the batteries don't last very long and can ruin an image session. So instead I have opted to connect both the mount and the camera to the power at my house. That way I can theoretically image infinitely and I don't have to worry about batteries going dead and ruining my imaging session. And like I said, I'm doing this to power both the mount and the camera. So in order to do this with a camera, you have to have what's called a dummy battery, which it looks like a battery, but it has a cord that comes out of it. So that way you can plug the cord into like the wall at your house or into an external battery pack if you're out in the field or something like that. Alright, so now what I'm doing is I'm just adding the counterweight to that pole that you see on the bottom of the mount. And the reason that you have to add this counterweight is so you can balance the load of your camera, lens, and whatever other gear you might have. Because the way the tracker works, if you don't have the load balanced properly, it'll cause inaccurate tracking and it won't track properly. So you have to get everything balanced for proper and accurate tracking of the mount. Okay, so I got all the cords routed and everything plugged in, so the mount and the camera now have power. So now what I'm doing is I'm setting up my dew heater band, and what a dew heater band does is it just keeps the lens warm during your imaging session, so that way it doesn't build up condensation or fog up during taking pictures. So it just keeps everything nice and clear and focused and whatnot, so that way the lens can just stay free of fog and not ruin any of your photos. Okay, so I have all the equipment set up and everything, and now I'm just going to get everything connected and start pointing it at the sun and then start our imaging session. The first thing first, we have to connect the phone to the mount. That way we can control the mount. Now we're going to go to the sun. Alright, so the mount and everything is now set up. We are pointed at the sun. It took me a little bit longer to find it, just because I was zoomed in at 300 millimeters. If I could have zoomed out, found the sun, and then zoomed back in, it would have been better, but the heater band to keep the lens from fogging up prevents me from zooming it back in, so I have to stay at 300 millimeters. So it took me a little bit longer to find it, but we're locked on now, tracking the sun, and I must have did a pretty good job of aligning it because it hasn't even drifted even a little bit out of the frame of centering it up and everything, so alignment's pretty good. Now we can start the imaging session. And the camera settings I'm using to do that are ISO 100, aperture f6.3, and a shutter speed of 1/250th of a second, because we got that dark solar filter on there, so we don't need to crank the shutter speed super duper high to keep the exposure and keep the sun from being blown out. So I got my intervalometer here. I have it set up on a 10-second timer, and then it's going to take a picture every 30 seconds. Actually, I think I'm going to change that to every 15 seconds. And there we go. And let the imaging session begin. Alright, so we're done with our imaging session, and I've got the photos loaded up in Lightroom, and I've actually went through and edited one of the photos. Now, for some reason, in a lot of these photos, they actually came out of focus. I'm not really sure what that's about because I checked focus multiple times throughout the imaging session, but that's just one of the challenges of photographing the sun because it's such a far away distant object and it's such a bright object that you have a very thin window of where it's actually in focus before you focus too far or not far enough. So it's actually really hard to get the sun in focus, but I managed to get some shots that were good, so I edited one of those up and I'll put that at the end of the video. But I think it came out pretty cool. It's kind of nice. You can actually see some of the detail and like some sunspots and whatnot, which I thought was pretty cool. So it came out pretty good given the circumstances and whatnot, but I'm happy with it, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you got any questions or anything, feel free to leave them in the comments below, but I guess I'll catch you guys in the next one. See you later.